Welcome to the Vinny Rock Podcast.
Much more than this, I did it my way.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's the Vinny Rock Podcast. I did a podcast with my boy at his little location. We did a kind of a live feed. So this podcast coming up right now is going to be that. You guys can check it out. There's a big discussion right now and arguments over the Rats Tourniquet and the Cats Tourniquet. And just because I did time in the tactical medical space, I'm kind of familiar with the argument. And I thought it'd be fair for everyone to have an equal voice in the fight. And so I gave my boy... Jeff Kirkham the opportunity to explain himself. So you guys get to check out this podcast. It's pretty cool if you guys in the tactical medical world, or even if you're interested in buying some kind of tourniquets for your kids. Understand the research and make sure that whatever tourniquet you use is best for them. I'll just say it that way. You guys know the sponsors that I have on the podcast. Don't forget them. Willie Pete's Chocolate, my man. We're still working on getting that hot sauce out. It's been a little crazy. Willie Pete's Chocolate, he's a veteran. He makes it out of his own home. Everyone who's tried it has not been disappointed, and I promise you that. You guys go check out Willie Pete's Chocolate Co. on Instagram and WilliePete'sChocolate.com. Chocolates with an S.com. Check them out. Fucking A. Beyond Clothing. Beyond Clothing is another one of my sponsors. We've both been so busy, it's been hard to link up with these guys. But Expeditionary Clothing Systems, you guys check them out. I got all kinds of stuff I'm hoping to buy. And, I've obviously recently gotten to the mode where since I'm living in Utah, I need to start learning how to hike and camp. Not the military version of it, but actually hike and camp. And so Beyond Clothing is my go-to store. That's where I'm going to go get all my gear for it. So you guys check them out, Beyond Clothing, beyond.clothing on Instagram. Temple 57, you guys already, man, it was crazy. The other day, Temple 57 calls me up and say, hey, man, we need some dog handlers in Los Angeles. There's some opportunities out there. And still, if you are a dog handler and you were in California or willing to relocate on your own dime, in California, there is work for dog handlers. You let me know, or you hit up Temple 57, and they'll find you some work. If not, the next contract that comes out, that's a big one, I'm going to let you know, like I do on social media, and we'll try and get you those jobs filled by veterans. My goal is to try and get more veterans opportunities, but not even that, even law enforcement officers that have the experience that look for it. Anyone really, but those are the two, really, the markets that I try and make sure they get, opportunity. Boom, boom, boom. Perseverance Survival makes the hoodies. I just got my new hoodie with the zipper. It's a full-on zipper, Whoopee hoodie. I forgot it at the house. I got to get that. Damn. I'm glad I reminded myself about that because I get so many things sent to me, and I got that and I put it in the other room, and I forgot about it. So don't forget Whoopee hoodies over there at Perseverance Survival, Perseverance_Survival. You can check them out at perseverancesurvival.com. Get your Whoopee hoodies now, and you can have a limited time. They have the zipper all the way down, which is, to me, is freaking, I don't know, it's fucking perfect. It's awesome. Awesome. Core Medical Group just donated. There was a competition, and Rob Hetrick was able to. He won it. And he won a free blood work, a new patient sign up, and a doc consultation. So that's pretty cool, man. So you guys know I use Core Medical Group. Core Medical Group is where I get my TRT from. I've tested low T for years, and I finally have a company who can send it directly to my house, and it's very convenient and it's cost effective. So you guys check it out. If you guys have any questions, hit me up. Core Medical Group. Boom, boom, boom. And that's all for today. You guys check it out. The podcast, pretty interesting one. If you like the tactical medical world, if you like to hear the argument and a good debate, you'll get to hear one side of it here, and you can find the other side of the arguments all over the social media if you're interested. But me personally, if you guys are asking, there's a lot of options. You can hit me up personally. I'll give you my answers on what tourniquets I use for what. All right. You'll have a good day. Bye. Vinny Rock. Hey, what's up, guys? It's the Vinny Rock Podcast. This is actually a new platform we're doing. We're going to try and do some of these podcasts live, hopefully all of them from now on.
Yeah.
Cool. And pretty excited about this. I'm obviously using the Ready Man facilities for this. Thank you for making this happen.
Always welcome.
Yeah.
Always reaching out to help the family.
There you go, man. If you guys don't know who this is my good friend, Jeff Kirkham. And Jeff Kirkham, if you don't mind, please just a quick bio, what you're willing to share, you know what I mean? So the people that are listening and watching can know.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Jeff Kirkham. I run Ready Man, which is emergency preparedness, prepper, survivalist, survival. We do survival gear and training.
Yeah.
And then we're big on media and tutoring videos that to push out to preparation for like disaster. And we try to encompass as much as we can. Hurricane, tornado, all the way up to, post-apocalypse. And, which, we wrote that just recently released our novel, Black Autumn. So I do that. And then I also run Rats Tourniquet, and I'm the inventor of the Rats Tourniquet.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have some extensive military history as well.
Yeah, I did 28 years as a Green Beret, intermixed in there as a law enforcement officer for a little bit, and then war kicked off, and I went back over and was on the invasion, and then ended up getting recruited into a counter-terrorist unit.
Yeah.
So I was in that unit for 13 years and racked up, years and years and years on the ground over in Afghanistan and Iraq, working with, lead, train, and advising indigenous forces. So it'd be 4 or 5 Americans, and we would have 200 Afghanis or Iraqis that we'd train them during the day, and then the target packets would start coming in, late afternoon, and then we'd go through the planning cycle, and then it was like, okay, grab your rifle. Let's go.
Let's do it.
Hopefully you were paying attention in class.
Hopefully you listened enough that you know how to do this. And like I've heard a rumor, something like you've spent somewhere around 8 years, overseas.
Yeah, just if you add up all of the time that I was over there, it was just over 8 years between Iraq and Afghanistan. So going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So I was averaging about 9 months out of the year for the early days of the war, and then I slacked off to about 6 to 7 ish months out of the year over there working.
Crazy. This interview is probably coming like years too late. We should have been doing this a while ago, and so I'm excited to finally have you now. It's always I want to make sure that I tell your story the way I think it needs to be deserving to tell, and as well as you're the type of man it's hard to get information out of, as in like you're not going to boast about yourself, which is something I admire and I respect, and it's something I try myself to be more like. But I think what's happened in the Ranger community and in the Special Operations community itself, not the Navy SEAL, but a lot of us were raised in the mindset of being quiet professionals. And so we've kind of hurt our own recruiting. We've hurt our own history by not telling our story per se. And not for the purpose of being boastful or any other reason, but just to be able to tell the story for history's sake and for the men who've passed behind us.
My first sergeant major was a guy by the name of Pete Bell, RIP, passed away. Yeah. He was a Vietnam vet, and he had been a MACV-SOG guy, and he was a fascinating guy. And for the folks out there that don't know who MACV-SOG are, they were the guys that were tied into the CIA. They were special forces. They were Green Berets that were on duty, that were working with the agency programs that were over there, and they're doing cross-border operations into Laos, Cambodia.
Yeah.
And he actually was one of 2 guys that survived of a team. They jumped in, they parachuted in to do a reconnaissance on a company of North Vietnamese, and they ended up basically parachuting into the middle of a battalion of North Vietnamese. It's just an absolute fascinating story. And, and I told Pete, I was like, Pete, you have got to write this stuff down, man. Yeah. I was like, because the lessons you guys learned in Vietnam, the creativity, the out of the box thinking, the solutions, I was like, you've got to write this down so it doesn't get lost. And he was like, yeah, I need to do that. And then, 6 months later, he died of a heart attack doing a PT test. And I remember thinking, damn, man, what a loss of knowledge.
And that's that's exactly my argument is that there's so many stories like that, right, that need to be told, I think, for the better of just the history of America, right, and for the history of what we've done overseas, and not even that, and just to show what some of these units and some of the sacrifices have been for, you know, and that's the hardest thing, is that the quiet professionals, I think, is kind of hurt our own history. Like my son says, Dad, I want to be a Navy SEAL, and you're like, wait. what are you talking about? Because he hears it through mainstream media and everything else, you know?
The SEALs are great at the recruiting game. And, you know, it's like the SEALs and the Marines. I'm not sure if you're a Navy guy or Marine, I don't know what they do with those guys, but they have got phenomenal esprit de corps.
Yeah.
Like Marines in general have amazing esprit
My father's
de corps.
pinning on my Ranger tab and says, you're almost as good as a Ranger, as a Marine now. And I'm like, whoa, dude. Like,
and it's like, I see I've got a couple dudes in the Ready Man crew that are former Marines, and it's like they do this secret handshake or something. I'm like, did I miss something? But, you know, in the Army, I don't know what it is. You know, the SEALs are great about, you know, helping each other out and stuff. I don't know what it is in the Army, though. We tend to, it's more like a gang. It's like a gang initiation. I remember, like, when I went through, you know, some of my training in the Army, I was like, okay, I don't know how much I learned. I feel like it was a gang initiation. I survived, so I guess I'm part of the group.
I'm in. I guess they're going to drink a beer with me now. Is that how it works? Well, dude, I talk about that because I think there's so much to your story that people don't know, right? And right now, what's going on is obviously there's you know, the reason I even contact you and say, hey, let's do this podcast is because there's a lot of heat getting thrown your way on who are you and why is the drama in the TCCC community, the tactical medical community, about the Rats Tourniquet and the issues between that and a Cats Tourniquet, right? And it's two different owners. If you guys don't know about it, we're going to explain more in a little bit. But so much drama in that, and it's funny. So when someone posted a picture online and says, "Who's this guy?" You know, and I'm like, "What?" Like, for people to not know, you know, Jeff Kirkham's story, for me is an interesting thing because I think you've done so much. I can almost say there's very few guys who have an extensive career as you, as well as who's achieved so much outside of the military, as in books you've written, inventions. I mean, this is just one of multiple different inventions that you have patents on, instructions, and you provide so much value for the people that are out there looking for information, and for someone, I guess, to not know your name. Obviously, you're not a Vincent Rocco Vargas. You're not a Matt Best, right? You're not the type of personality that's going to be putting yourself out there very much, and for the sake of comedy or whatnot. But you are someone who puts yourself out there for the sake of providing value for other people. And so when the conversation comes up and like, who is he and what's he doing and is he being shady and all this, I'm like, wait. I'd rather have Jeff on here to explain himself. Yeah. You know, and the argument goes this, if you guys are listening right now, there is some debate over what is the best tourniquet out there for practice, for use in the military. And me being in the military, obviously, and also working for the company that sells this, it was very common. It was easy. I didn't know any tourniquet besides the one they handed me. The first time I got to Ranger Battalion, we had the ratchet strap.
Yeah, the ratchet. Yeah. Ranger ratchet.
Yeah, the Ranger ratchet. So we put it on, we ratchet it. And obviously the issues with that is you can ratchet that thing so fucking tight. It becomes...
Yeah, it's too much of a mechanical advantage.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it becomes an issue. And so then from there, we started getting the Cats Tourniquet is the only other one I've seen. Later on in my career, I started to see the soft T. And so the Cats has gone through several different variations of it by the time it is now. I think right now it's on 8.
7.
Yeah. And so it's the only one I've ever been issued. It's the one I've been issued, the one that I used, the one that I believed in because it was the one that was given to me. And then I learned more about it, and I've learned a lot to say that it is a good tourniquet until I go and start learning more about yours and start reading some of the articles you post. And then it goes to this interesting conversation where like, maybe I need to research more. And I'm not saying anything bad about the company. I'm just saying me as a user, as someone who's been overseas, someone who actively it trains to use a tourniquet on a situation, whether it be the Border Patrol and Special Operations or not. I always want to use the best possible thing I can for the person I'm serving. And so that's where the questions are. And that's what we leave us here today about. Please explain to me, you know, what is the issue that's going on right now?
Well, I think first and foremost, right, is like, what is the best tourniquet? And I'll allay all myths and all of that. The best tourniquet is the one that you have on you.
Right.
Bar none. I mean, the market, there's a bunch of, when I first came out with the Rats Tourniquet, there was almost nothing. It was out there. Right. And I knew that I wasn't going to get into the military. And so I was like, well, I'll look at a domestic application for this thing. It was like way. That was still back when people thought that if you used a tourniquet, you were going to lose the limb, and some of these other urban myths. And but on the market there are a bunch of really great tourniquets that are out right now. And so that's why I say the best tourniquet is the one that works for you. It's like, what's the best handgun?
Right.
What's the best rifle? What's
shooter preference?
What's the best set of tennis shoes? What's the best car to drive? And it's like all of a sudden you get this user preference of like, I like this one because it seems to work better for me and for my family.
Right.
Because generally speaking, when we go through life, as dads, we think about first and foremost is like, okay, is this good for my family? Is this good for my kids?
Right.
Is this good for, okay, then next is like, okay, is this good for me? Can I make this work? It's like I've driven minivans for years and years and years because it's just like, well, one, it's economical. Two, like I'm over 40, so I don't really care about being cool anymore. Three, I got kids so they can jump in the back. And four, I'm always tinkering with stuff and buying random pieces of stuff for whatever invention that I'm working on at the time. So I could just throw it in the back of the van. And I was kind of like one of Napoleon's soldiers. Napoleon, he was kind of one of the guys that in a similar kind of way to the Germans, he did kind of a blitzkrieg-esque attack. And that's one of the reasons that Napoleon, and he was phenomenally good with artillery, Napoleon being an artilleryman himself, but they would ride their horses into the ground because they were just like, it's a tool for war. I'll ride this thing into the ground, and when it dies, we'll eat it, and I'll jump on another one, and we'll ride that thing. So for me, for like minivans, it was like, I'm not cool. This thing's never going to be cool. I don't care. I just drive them until the wheels fall off, get rid of it. We'd usually do a Ready Man series, like breaking into it or something, teaching people how to hot wire and stuff. And then I'd be like, okay, send a scrapyard, and I jump in my other one and keep on driving. So. Right. So it's utility, right? So what makes the most sense for you depending on your own personal circumstances?
Right. Yeah. And so then their argument goes is, there's a lot of people saying pretty negative things about you. And the funny thing is, like, I don't think a lot of people know who you are and what you're trying to do here, right? I think your whole intention is if you can provide something that works for the user, for the operator, for the soldier, whatnot, that's going to benefit them, then you're going to do so, right? Like, all I want to do is provide more value to other people. And so that's exactly what you're trying to do for our men in service and as well as law enforcement officers. And so the argument now is, I guess in the TCCC world is how thin it is,
Yeah. And I mean, and that goes through some of the arguments that go against it and go for it and whatnot. And I would argue the interesting thing about the story of this is, about 10, 15 years ago, I was in Afghanistan and we were assaulting a target. And there's several Al-Qaeda HVTs, high-value targets were inside that we were going after. And anyway, so we're approaching the place. We're getting set. Men are lining up on the gate so that we can flood into the compound, right? And then boom, all of a sudden we've got gunfire coming through the gate. A guy stood on the other side with his Kalashnikov and opened up on us. So I had two of my men went down with gunshot wounds to the legs. And we immediately jumped up there, grabbed these guys, pulled them down, get them out of the line of fire. And my Afghan medics, remember, it's like this stuff, there's like three Americans, and I'm surrounded by my own commandos. And it's like moments like this where it's like, oh my gosh, I hope I did a good job training these guys because my life depends on what they do at this moment. And so I look down at the medics to see how our guys are doing, right? And it's night, it's high stress because there's gunfight going on right now. We're wearing NVGs, night vision devices. We're wearing gloves, for assaulting. And I sat there and watched my Indige medics struggle with the tourniquet that we were issued. And I was like, that's interesting. And then later on, we got everything cleaned up and, captured these guys. And those same men that had tourniquets on their legs were trying to pull them off. They were trying to take them off because it was causing so much pain to them. And so that was one of those moments where I was like, man, okay, there's, something clicked off in the back of my head. And I was like, well, okay. And then a couple of months later, I'd rotated back. So I used to go over for several months, and then I'd come back for, couple of months, and then I'd go back over for several months. And when I'd rotate back, I would train people because I love training Americans and stuff because they ask really interesting, great questions. They love to, debate, this, that, and the other, which is great because as an instructor, that makes me think about what it is that I'm doing, where it's like, I can't browbeat, some special operations guy into understanding, the nuances of A technique or B technique. Right. And so I've got to be able to provide evidence and data and stuff and common sense. So anyways, I rotated back into the States and I was helping to run a course for the PJs, the pararescue men. And if you don't know who a pararescue man is, they're highly, highly trained trauma medics. And they're highly trained enough that they get cut to special forces. We have 18 Deltas, but they'll cut them over to the SEALs and and all those guys. And so anyways, I'm sitting up on the catwalk and here's some PJs are going through the house. They're getting pelted with simunitions and we're inducing casualties. We're saying, all right, you put a tourniquet on that leg, put a tourniquet on that arm. And, it's dark, high stress, working with gloves. Yeah. And they actually did not have NVGs on. And I sat up on the catwalk and I would watch the PJs have the same problem with the tourniquet that my Inditch had. Yeah. And it was one of those moments where I was like, man, this isn't a training issue. Yeah. This is a design issue.
No, it's not a training issue because those guys are highly trained.
Highly trained. And they were at the end of the pipeline. Yeah. So they were getting ready to go after their squadrons. And so they were really motivated because they had something to prove because this was kind of like the last thing, right? So, from that point, I said, man, that's interesting. And I started thinking about it, and I was like, there's got to be something better out there. Yeah. And I started looking, and at that time, it was not a lot of information on the internet. Tourniquets were very edgy at the time. And one night I was, so I was playing with a couple of different designs, and actually 3 patents came out of this whole process. But one night I was watching a little girl was on TV, right? And she had a rubber band and she was wrapping that rubber band on her finger, right? And as she wrapped that band around her finger turned blue, kind of like mine is now. Right. And I had that epiphanal moment where it was like, well, why can't I make up the width of a tourniquet with multiple wraps? Who says that I can't do that? So I was like, okay, back to looking to the past, right? Who's done it? Who's checked this out?
Let me ask you a real quick question before that. Like, why does the width become even a part of the conversation?
Well, I would argue that there's mounting evidence that is there's mounting evidence to suggest that it's an urban myth that the width thing. You need to be wide enough, but there's a growing group of evidence to suggest that you don't have to be that wide, unless it depends on the tool that you're using. Depending on the tool that you're using is where the width comes in. So if we talk about a inflatable BP cuff that sometimes uses a tourniquet, or they call it an ER tourniquet, it's like that wide, and it fills up with air and it shuts that off. And then all the way down to another tourniquet that I just recently found. It's about as big around as my finger, and it's elastic and it's narrow. And orthopedic surgeons use them on patients, and they have 1 million, over 1 million uses using this tourniquet with no problem. So the problem that's always cited is they worry about tissue damage or neuro damage. Yeah. But now with this evidence that I've discovered, it doesn't support that theory. And the physics of it actually doesn't support that theory because the pressure is the pressure to shut off the blood flow. Right. And so that pressure is either on the nerve for a very narrow area, or it's on the same amount of pressure as on the nerve for a widespread area. Yeah. So actually, on paper, it would appear that wider over a neuro area could actually be causing more issues than if it was narrow. Remember, we still need to cut down the blood flow or stop the blood flow, the arterial blood flow. But the physics now, if you look at it, is going, well, wait a minute. we think this, but we don't know this.
Yeah.
So where is the proof? And that's where these guys that have this narrow elastic tourniquet with over 1 million uses and no problems are making a very enticing, argument for that. And so it's all about the, showing the evidence, debating the evidence, and then going from there. So that's that whole Socratic, let's argue, let's debate the evidence or the merits of the evidence, but we don't personally bash each other, because that's ungentlemanly. It doesn't solve anything nor help anything.
So, there's the people that probably don't understand, a tourniquet that's applied. The fear was for so many years was that they would have to lose their leg. Like you put a tourniquet on, like, all right, you're going to save their life, but they're probably going to lose their leg. And what is that whole?
So that's completely, it's urban myth. So what that comes from is the best that I've been able to figure out looking back through history, through studying, is it comes from the Civil War. And so what was happening in the Civil War, obviously it started a little bit before that, but started in the Civil War. And what was happening was guys were going into the barn on one side and going out the other side of the barn, missing a leg or an arm or something. What they missed though was back in the 1860s when we were having the Civil War, there was no such thing as a vascular surgeon. So by nature of having an arterial wound, you've got an artery that's been opened up. It's been compromised by some way or completely severed, right? So somebody like the modern day miracle workers get in there and they sew that thing back together. And then they start closing the wound up and they debris all the dead tissue and all that stuff while they're going through. There was no level of expertise like that, not even going into germs and antibiotics. There was no level of expertise like that existed back in the 1800s. And the reality is that expertise didn't even come around until like World War II is when they first started really kind of messing with that. And so maybe a little bit earlier, but not much because the problem was infection. And so you had a higher chance of survival at that time. One, nobody could repair those arteries or those vessels if they were destroyed or compromised. And then two, wounds have got to heal from kind of the inside out, or else you create these chasms, which is what's generally believed. And so you've got this open weeping wound. And so you've got a higher incidence of infection that's going to take place, and could potentially, the infection was actually more deadly than the bullets themselves. And so with that's where so many amputations came in. So this was a myth that permeated throughout the ages. However, that was one of the eureka moments for me with my tourniquet. Was I found a study that was by a couple of surgeons in World War II, and they were advocating using surgical tubing wrapped multiple times on a limb to stop the bleeding. And they were, and essentially these guys were beating the drum saying, we've got to stop the bleeding because we're losing too many men on the battlefield. Yeah. And so surgical tubing wrapped multiple times, very simple. I think it was like, they advocated like 6 or 7 feet of surgical tubing, inexpensive, easy to use, teach you how to use it in about 3 seconds, and send that out to the troops. And then I had the confirmation of my idea was when I found a Canadian study where the Canadians were looking at tourniquets. The Canadians, this was pre-CAT, so the Canadians did not test the CAT in this because it was pre-CAT. And the Canadians found that the most effective tourniquet, it was the easiest to use. It was 100% for blood occlusion on arms and legs, and it was inexpensive, was surgical tubing wrapped multiple times. And so that was that moment where I was like, oh my gosh, okay, so all I have to do is I've got to figure out how to make surgical tubing more secure, easier to use, more robust, and I've got to figure out a way to finish that thing off so that I can overcome all of the stuff that they were saying in the studies where they had problems with surgical tubing. Right. And so, 2 years and 26 prototypes later, I figured out securing it is essentially it's a trucker's hitch. So the end goes through the loop like this. It's very common. People try and open this up and put their arm through there, and I'll be the first to admit that will not work. You run that through there. So now you've got a 2-to-1 pull on this. And so now you've got that mechanical advantage, and then you wrap this multiple times. And then this metal piece is a boat cleat. So this has been proven to be secure for about 2,000 years. And so, and that's essentially it. So all I did was I got new and improved surgical tubing. It's solid core and stretches, and it's got great rebound on it. But, and then modified a boat cleat and made it work, and boom, that's it. And then we took it out. I was like, all right, I've got this idea. I think this could work. And, started testing it, tested it with Doppler, tested it, with a pulse ox, obviously.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, it works. And so I ended up licensing it out to a defense, small defense vendor.
Yeah.
And they sold, they sold thousands of those things overseas to the Iraqis and then the Afghans. And then about 4 years ago, we launched that domestically, and that's when, once we launched this domestically, that's when we started running into the social media drama.
Why? What is that? Why do you even think that even is? Is it because now there's competition? So you think this design scares people? Well,
I think it's a couple of different things. I think we've got a little bit of groupthink going on. As Americans, contrary to what we believe, we're actually pretty resistant to change. We don't like to change. The Glock pistol is a great example of that. Yeah. Glock had to fight tooth and nail to overcome, the revolvers that police officers were wearing. And so we get into these group things. We get stuck into what we like to do. I mean, geez, look at special operations. It's only been in the last, 8 years that they switched over from the 1911 to the Glock.
Yeah.
And, and a lot of guys are saying, why didn't we do this a long time ago?
Yeah.
And so, we get married, we get emotional to different things that, exist in our life. And then, so there's part of that. And then this thing is so incredibly different than, the other tourniquet that was out there.
Yeah.
That I think it kind of threw some people for a loop where they were like, well, how can that doesn't look, it doesn't fit into the paradigm of my head. So how can it be what they're saying that it is?
Well, there's two tourniquets out there that are pretty similar. They're similar, but they're not, right? It's in the same, very similar look and everything. And then you got this, which is like, what is this? What is this? What is this wizardry?
Yeah. Absolutely. And so, I was getting some hate, and it was one of those things where it was like, hey, that's fine. If you don't want to buy my tourniquet, then that's fine. Have something else. Just have one with you.
That's my problem. This is my problem with the tactical community itself when it comes to something new. It's let me shit on it first as much as I can, and then eventually, slowly, maybe I'll start researching it and find maybe there's something to that. You know what I mean? And that's the hardest part. I was a TAC med instructor, a teachable C instructor. I was a medic for the Border Patrol for Special Operations in the Boar Star team. I carried 2 of these. I carried 2 cats with me because me as the medic, I just want to have options. You know what I mean? At the same time, I liked your product. We're friends, and I was like, I'm going to use it, and I believed in it. And so there's always people saying, oh, no, I'm only going to use this tourniquet. Oh, no, I'm only going to use this. I'm like, do whatever you want. It's fine. The cool thing is when you start doing a lot of the research, when you actually start reading some of the links, you actually start checking out some of the studies, when you take the time to actually learn about something, that can raise some questions for you. And when it does, that's a good thing, right? Yeah. Like for me as a dude who's in charge of guys who is the medic of a team, I want to make sure that I'm providing the best training and as well as tools that I can bring to the table that's going to potentially save my dudes' lives. And so who am I to say I'm only going to trust one thing forever? That's crazy talk to me. I know I'm going to look and I'm going to go to different schools. I'm going to learn many, many different options. And then I'm going to choose which ones I feel is the best through my own, through my own study and my own learning.
And it is, the reality of saying one thing, it solves all the problems. Really, you stifle innovation. You stop the evolutionary process of getting better and better and better. And that's what we should all be striving for. So for me, I'm a survivalist prepper, right? Yeah. I run Ready Man, and which means by nature, part B of the, of the definition of a prepper survivalist is a skeptic.
Yeah, you question everything.
I question everything. I'm the guy that's standing in the back seat, in the back row going, hey, wait a minute. No, the government's not going to be here when there's a hurricane. Hey, no, the government's they're going to be late for the flooding. We've got to be ready to take care of ourselves.
That's the same way I raise my kids though.
Well,
you know what I mean? My kids are like, my daughter's like, hey, Dad, blah, blah, blah. I was like, I don't know. Here's my opinion. Go look it up. make your own opinion. Go research that. Like, don't believe everything everyone tells you. As soon as someone tells you something, like, okay, cool, that's what you're saying. Let me go look. Let me go research. Because if you don't, like, what are you? You're a lemming. You're like, hey, here's the truth. Believe that.
My wife does that to me all the time. I'll come up with some broad brushstroke thing. You know, we all do it, right? And I'll come up with some broad brushstroke, thing like this is this, and she's like, that doesn't sound right to me, and I'm like, no, it's true, and she's like, really?
Research.
It's really like, no, you're close, but no, you're.
That's the same as me. Lyrics to music. I always say the wrong lyric to music. I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure it's what it says. She goes, no, that's not what it says. But that's the crazy thing is, like, I think we should be already in a mindset where you question everything.
Yeah.
Especially in training, and especially in a life or death situations. Why wouldn't you question every tactic, every option, every tool?
Yeah.
I don't understand that, because for me, I want to make sure, like raising kids again, if I'm going to make sure I check the box on everything to make sure that they're safe, and the same as training soldiers, you know what I mean?
And that's how you get a deeper understanding, right? And backtracking to like when I was saying that I love to train American soldiers, because they ask tough questions. That, it's like, why are we doing this? Especially guys that are in like, that are other Green Berets,
right?
Because it's like, Green Berets are always questioning everything, and so it's like, well, why I don't explain it to me,
right?
And half the time they're just testing to see if you know what it is you're talking about. But it makes you stop and think. And when you question and when you go through and you research, you actually create a deeper understanding on your own, which makes you a better individual. And it all goes to debate, right? So the more that we can engage in gentlemanly debate, the better off we're all going to be. Yeah. So we argue the data, we argue the methods. We can still argue the data.
Yeah.
There's nothing saying that we can't. We can go through, we can tear studies apart, and we pull out our chunks and they pull out their chunks. And at the end of the day, we go, okay, well, that was a good discussion. Did we figure anything else? Because our country was founded on debate. The founding fathers were in a room. That's why the Declaration of Independence, how many rewrites did that thing go through? Yeah. Because they were arguing on where commas were going and same with the Constitution of, I don't like that sentence. You need to put this over here. And it's like, well, it says the same thing. And somebody, you'd have somebody like Sam Adams that'd be like, no, it doesn't say the same thing. You got a guy that's like an attorney or something, or a high intellect person is like, no, it doesn't say the same thing, or no, it doesn't imply the same thing. We've got to move these around. And that's why there was such a huge gap between the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. And then there was a big gap between the Constitution and the amendments, like the First Amendment, Second Amendment, Third Amendment, and as you go down, because there was this constant gentlemanly debate going back and forth about how things should be written, and they were following that method, because that's how all of us progress.
Well, it's crazy because I think we're right now in an age where there is very little progression in dialogue, right? You have the news, they know what they're doing. They're going to go ahead and they're going to publish a picture, and they're going to put, clickbait comment, right? Here's the tagline. Oh my God, Trump did this, or oh my God, this happened. And what do some people who don't even read the article go, oh my God, that's fact. Yeah. That's true. I'm going to share it. And I'm going to say, I can't believe this is true. And that is the saddest culture that we live in these days, that no one's actually taking time to read, see if it's even a valid site. There's people that share some of these satire pages, and I'm laughing like, bro, do you not know that's the Duffel blog, bro? Like that is a satire. And people believe it's fact. Yeah. Because they haven't taken the time to study themselves. My whole thing is like, I like to take 3 different opportunities to study the same thing from 3 different locations.
And, at no time should a cartoon or graphic art win an argument. There's not one instance. Yeah. There are very few nevers in life, right? But there is no instance that I'm aware of that like graphic art should be winning an argument. Yeah. That's Stalin and Lenin's Russia. That is control of the mindless masses. Yeah. And it's wrong.
Well, any of you guys that are listening right now live or that are watching live, you guys are more than welcome to ask questions in the comments. I can read them, and then we can answer them for you. If you guys have any questions with the Rats Tourniquet itself, or any questions with Jeff himself, and that's those of you who are watching this live currently right now. And so right now there's a big debate on whether your tourniquet, works compared to others, and it's the best. I mean, you believe in your tourniquet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hands down.
It's like any other mechanical device, right? And so this, when I was putting this thing together, I started thinking about it like an engineer. When I was thinking about the problem of compressing tissue to stop blood flow, I approached it like an engineer. Right. And it was because it's an engineering problem. I need to exert X amount of force over an area so that I can reliably and repeatedly shut down arterial blood flow. And then I need to add to that, I need to be able to do that same activity under stress. Right. So the sympathetic response goes through, adrenaline is dumping. I lose my technical and fine motor skills of my hands. I've got auditory exclusion. I'm getting focal of the, how do I then say, okay, I can still do this stuff, especially when I'm scared in the dark. Yeah. And so it's an engineering problem that is then verified on the medical side.
You are so intelligent. It's crazy. You talking, I'm like, I don't know if some of my listeners are going to understand what you just said, but that's awesome. So now what? So now you're in a position right now that you almost have to prove who you are for people just to respect your opinion.
Well, what happened was about 4 months ago, the attacks against me, they stopped attacking an inanimate object. They started attacking me personally. Yeah. And so, and the attacks, in a social media, playground crap. And what was happening was it was the most profane, inappropriate attacks against me, my family, my friends, some of my dealers that sell my product, where people were getting on there and bashing them using profanity and sexual innuendos. Goodness. And it was completely inappropriate, unbelievably inappropriate. Yeah. And that's where it's like, there's not one listener, there's not one of those people that are out there saying that I'm a bad person right now. Right. And I forgive them all because they don't have the whole story. But there's not one of them that if they had been pushed a fraction of how much I would have pushed, they wouldn't have gotten mad. And I'll admit it. I got mad. I said, hey, you know what? You can bash my product. You can bash my invention. Coming after me and my family and my friends, that I won't stand for that.
That's uneducated. That's everything that's just bad in the world. Like, look, man, you don't like something, don't go for the person. Like, I can't stand when people make fun of my chin. I get mad at that. So I'm sure you would be pissed about people attacking your family over that.
I'll tell you what, I got mad. And so what I did was I said, okay, what is the holy cow? So it was the standard issue tourniquet in the military, because these guys kept bashing me saying, you need to follow evidence-based medicine. You need to read the studies. And if you read the studies, you'd be smarter, right. And to properly quote them, I'd need to stick in a whole bunch of, profanity in there. And the profanity was so bad that when I started backtracking who these people, they all hide behind anonymous names. Yeah. They all hide behind anonymous names. Right. And so when I started backtracking who they were, because I used to look for people for a living, right? Yeah. And so it'd take me about 2 hours and I was like, oh, okay, I see who that person is. I was flabbergasted because one of the main offenders was a female, highly trained surgeon that with a fantastic background. And if you could read the comments, I'll show you the screenshots. If you read the comments, it would make a sailor blush. It was unbelievable. So I got mad. And I said, okay, you want to play this game? Yeah. So I looked at all their hashtags and I bought all those hashtags as URLs. And then I said, you guys say you're arguing evidence and you're so smart. Really, that's cool, because what about all these studies right here that say that your sacred cow has spots? Yeah. If so, all of the same stuff they're saying about mine, I was like, here you go, argue this evidence. And so what I had done naively had said, I had thrown down the gauntlet. Now they're saying that I was trying to do a smear campaign against North American Rescue. North American Rescue is worth over $100 million. Yeah. They are a massive corporation. They were just purchased by a huge investment firm. Rats Tourniquet is like me and 4 other dudes. Yeah. We are a fly speck on the butt of that 500-pound gorilla. Right. What are we going to do against North American Rescue? That is absolutely ludicrous.
And it's not directly coming from them. It's coming from other people outside that are obviously,
and it's coming from these trolls that have latched onto it for whatever reason. And so what that site is, evidence-basedmedicine.com, what that site is me throwing down the gauntlet and saying, okay, smart guys, argue this evidence,
right?
Justify all of this stuff here. Man, you would have thought, and I, had about 15 URLs. I was mad, and looking back, it was kind of, okay, maybe I went overboard a little bit, but I have like 15 URLs pointing toward the site because it was like, hey, you guys want to argue? You guys want to argue evidence-based against tourniquets? Here you go. Let's engage in gentlemanly debate and discuss this. And boy, you would have thought that I had, farted in church because it was.
Well, people thought that you wrote some of these.
Yeah, I was accused of writing these studies.
Some of these studies come from, just to be clear, some of these studies come from Harvard studies. So, these studies come from legitimate locations. You were able to find them.
Let's see. I've heard that I wrote them. I heard that I cherry picked the information. I heard that they were old, outdated studies. I heard that they were studies by nobodies. And it was like, well, okay, but Harvard University's 2 of them that are on there. And like the latest study, I think, is like 2017. Let me be clear. I've never publicly disparaged any other product.
Yeah.
I haven't. And, on a public forum or anywhere, the cat tourniquet is a phenomenal device that has saved thousands of lives.
Yes.
The cat tourniquet is a phenomenal device that changed the way that we looked at battlefield trauma, and it made the community better.
Yes.
It made the community better. My argument is we can do better. We need to continue to progress. We need to continue to seek out innovation and ask the question of, is this the best we can do, or can we do better?
Right.
And that was Jeff throwing down the gauntlet saying, let's fix this so that we can get towards something that is better, because we will all benefit from that.
100%.
But then it turned into an unbelievably disappointing bash fest against me personally. That the reality is it just tears down the whole community. It stifles innovation. You know how many messages since this started? You know how many messages I've received from other guys and gals that are veterans in the community that are like, hey, I've got this product, but I see what's happening to you and I'm scared to put it out there because I'm afraid the community's going to come after me.
That's the weirdest thing.
It's like people can't
we
even
tend to eat our
voice.
Own, man.
And the reality is we should be the strongest, most bound together, most promoting community that there is.
We should be. Correct.
We should be a force to be reckoned with.
We should be, but it's funny how I wonder if the negativity and negative comments and everything else, all the bashing, comes from fear of that there might be truth behind what you say. Because there's no way that comes from any other place.
I was so disappointed. I was listening to a podcast from one of the guys that doesn't like me, and that's fine. And they're medical guys, but I was really disappointed when I heard one of them say, "Hey, the tourniquet question has been figured out. Can we just move on? Can we just stop talking about this?" Mind you, this is a device that came out like 12 years ago, or actually longer ago, and it's like, come on. And they're like, "Well, there's been refinements." And it's like, okay, but there's still some. Let's keep pushing. Let's keep pushing the scope. Let's keep questioning. Let's open this up to debate. But a guy like me, nobody's going to debate the good, the bad, and the ugly, because they'll get attacked, just like I was by the community.
Oh, big time.
And it's unconscionable. I mean, that is attacking like that. That is the way of the socialists. That is the way of the communists. That is the way that they shut up the competition. And when they can't win their argument through gentlemanly debate, using evidence and arguing, you can argue evidence and you can argue data and you can argue methodology. But when you can't argue that, what do? They attack you personally. And it's like, you know what? You're just a bad person. And so you must have a bad product. So I'm not going to support you, which is one of the things. It's like, how many times have we seen that where they attack them? They attack the man, but because they know they can't attack the product.
It seems like a monopoly, and nobody wants that to change for some reason. That's weird.
Yeah, it is weird.
That's really weird, because like for me, Like I said, I like to think outside the box in training and everything else. I hate the phrase like, oh, this is how it's always been done. That was for me is like in training when people say that, I'm like, get the fuck out of here with that shit. Don't say that, because that means that no one's ever looked outside the box on this and see how can we improve it.
Yeah, I mean, if we stuck with the way that it's always been done, I mean, geez, how many different examples can we think of that it was like, well, that's the way it's always been done. Well, I pulled up my latest blog article, right, when I was writing that about questioning everything. They used to think cigarettes were great for itchy, irritated throats. They used to blow cigarette smoke, in the ears of children because they thought that it would help with earaches. Yeah. They used to give, I've got posts, you can find them on the internet, where it's like, hey, babies should be drinking 7-Up because it's better than mother's milk. And I mean, and let's go back. You're old enough, Rocco. Remember pre-war days? You came upon a trauma victim. The first thing you did was 2 large bore IVs, bolus the bags.
You're right.
Fluid resuscitation. And don't you dare think about using a tourniquet.
Oh, yeah. It's changed like crazy.
And it's done a complete role reversal, whereas now we don't do IV resuscitation anymore because we're killing people.
Yes.
It was bad science. We were killing people. And the first thing that we use, so IV fluid resuscitation is nowhere other than medication. Fluid resuscitation is nowhere. And then tourniquets are the first thing that we do. We're talking a complete flip of what we were talking about. And that was when I was in RIP 20 years ago.
When I was in RIP, we were during our medical portion, that's indoctrinal ranger indoctrinal program. We were putting IVs in. Now they're like bullshit.
Well, think about it. When I started my trauma training, so I got certified as an EMT in like 1988. Yeah. And then kept that up. And then the Army sent me to EMT training again. And then they saw fit to send me a bunch of other trauma schools when I was going through there. I was never blessed off on back then it was a 91 Alpha, or I think it's a 68 whiskey now or something. Right. So I never got the MOS because I was already an 18 series and I was kind of like, whatever. But I spent plenty of time acting as the medic. Yeah. And so, and with that, you think about how much time, it was an emphatic truth that you had to do IVs. Think about how much time, when you got good at doing IVs in the light, you did IVs in the dark with a flashlight. And when you got good with that, then you started doing it with night vision. And then when you got good at that, then you do it in a vehicle moving down a bumpy road. And then when you got good at that, and you were really high speed, then you did it in a helicopter, flying around with NVGs on. We spent so much time and money on flawed science. Yeah. Flawed science. And so, and that was SOCOM was the one that came up with a study where they, where they had the pigs and stuff, and they figured out, well, oh my gosh, we're killing people. Yeah. We've got to stop with this fluid resuscitation. Yeah. So, and that's these long held myths, like tourniquets, tourniquets are brand new. Yeah. Even in the civilian side, 4 years ago, I was still running into people that were saying, if you use a tourniquet, you're going to lose the limb. Oh, there's still law enforcement officers now that don't even have them as issue. They have to buy them themselves. Yeah, we donate. Which is crazy. We donate, and my heart goes out to, my law enforcement brothers and sisters. Like I was a police officer for several years before I went back into doing the military stuff. I did the law enforcement thing as well. And peace out. And we end up donating tourniquets to police officers all the time. Like I've got police officers that call me and it was probably 8 months ago. I had a guy call me and he was like, dude, he's like, do you have discounts? And I was like, yeah, man. I had talked to the guys on the phone. Right. And, these guys didn't even have body armor. Yeah. I mean, I was like, it is 2018, bro. Yeah. Because it's like 8 months ago. I was like, it's 2018, bro. You don't have body armor? And he's like, no, we can't get it because the city doesn't. Yeah. I talked to another guy. He'd been on the job 15 years. He hadn't been to training in 15 years. No, he went through his initial training and then that was it. And it's a whole different topic, man, because that's something that is near and dear to me is the lack of training for guys. It's hard to watch. Yeah. I mean, because what's the first budget that's cut is your training budget. Training. Yeah. And so that's why we end up donating a lot to these guys and gals. A lot of my border training buddies, they themselves know that I've recommended a Rats Tourniquet as well because I mean we're on the border, you know what I mean, and sometimes you're on the border, you're about 2 hours away from, sometimes an hour away from anything. So you want to be able to self-sustain yourself as much as you and your partner can. So I don't know. There's a question right here about what's the shelf life for rats. That's a good question. And To be honest with you, there's nothing fancy about this thing. It's a solid core of vulcanized rubber on the inside there. So, I mean, it's essentially a car tire.
Yeah.
Not quite as hard.
Yeah.
But think about that. So, what we tell folks is if the sheath on the outside, so this is a protective sheath, but it also is part of the magic of the tourniquet working. If this is frayed, we tell people, hey, if it's frayed, just throw it in your training box and go to another one. And then I say, hey, inspect the cleat up here. Mm-hmm. If there's any cracks in it or something like that, because you sat on it and it twisted over or something, then just throw it in the training box and get another one. I mean, or geez, just call me and we'll replace it. And so,
So, I mean, these rubber houses hold up in heat and cold and stuff like that.
Fantastic. It's been tested up to just over 200 degrees. And then one of the special forces group just took it down to negative 50 degrees. It lost its elasticity, but it's still at negative 20 degrees.
Yeah,
they were still able to use it, but so at negative 50, and then they'd warm it up and bring it back to. So it actually, I mean, rubber's pretty bomber stuff, right? And so, when God was figuring out that stuff, and then man, we figured out the vulcanization process, and it's pretty bomber. So
that's cool, man. That's good. Man, anything else, man? I just think it's crazy to me because I wanted to make sure I've given you the opportunity to have a platform to talk that's just outside of your own normal platform because of some of the crazy stuff that people were talking about. I'm like, man, people don't even know Jeff. Like, I know you. Some people said you're like, he's only nice to you because you're Rocco. Like, no, you've been nice to me even before I was Rocco. And so, I really do appreciate your friendship. I appreciate your wisdom. You're not a guy who's just going to go out there and just put something out there and just call it gospel. You're going to actually do your research. You're going to put out something that you believe is going to be good for the dudes. And you're one of the guys that has one of the most genuine characters, you know what I mean? And people don't know that about you because you really don't put yourself out there. And I think that's why it's easy for people to question you. That's easy for people to talk shit on you. Easy to people to try and tarnish your name because they really don't know you. They just know the man, the myth is of Jeff is not a guy that is known for being an outspoken person, known for being this big personality. And so I think it makes it easier for you to be a target for them. You know what I mean? And so that's why I didn't think it was fair for to watch all this stuff on social media and not be able to provide you an opportunity to speak, your opinion on it.
I appreciate it. I really do. And the thing that's really given me heart is a little bit of the question and not the bashing. There's a secret group for, you have to be a special forces dude to get in there, and like X number of people or people got to vouch for you that you'd been a Green Beret. And there were some of the questions that came up in there, and people were like, anybody know this guy? And there are a bunch of dudes from the from special forces that jumped on. I was like, I know Jeff. Yes, I know that guy. He's legit.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, and to their credit, all of them were like, oh, okay. Well,
that's the thing is that you have a crazy resume, like crazy stuff we can talk about, stuff we don't talk about, right? You have extensive history. And I'm interested in seeing that book one day, right? You know what I mean? But I know your personality. You're not the guy that wants to do that book, right? You're not. And it's not fair, I think, to some of us who deserve to hear those stories, right? I think I think it's the time for us to start to know more about who Jeff Kirkham is and what he's done in the space where we can say. But at the same time, like, for you to get the credit I believe you deserve. People don't realize a lot of stuff you do, like just from donating tourniquets is one thing. I mean, you've done that by the thousands. I'm not even going to mention how much, but not even that, but like you've helped a lot of your Afghani friends that you've worked with overseas, know, and you've helped them come to America. That's correct.
Yeah. Helped them transition when they came here. And we've got a great support network here. We have 12 or 13 of my former commandos and some of the programs that we had that are living here in Salt Lake City. Phenomenal individuals, gave up everything because they were fighting for us in the United States. Wally, if you've ever seen the Black Rifle Coffee video about Wally, Wally's one of my dearest friends. We've known each other. I've known him since he was 18 years old. We worked together for years over in the counter-terrorist unit. He's a phenomenal individual. And him and I spend a bunch of time, and trying to help out these other guys that are coming through. Wally survived 5 close assassination attempts against him directly. The last one, they hit his vehicle 19 times with fire and somehow just did not hit him.
And that's because he was
working for us. He was targeted on the Taliban Al-Qaeda assassination list. He was moving his family every month to stay ahead of them.
And he believed in our mission. He believed in our mission.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? He risked his life. He risked his family's life. He risked everything because he believed in our mission. And now you're here. And I know I'm not sure if you even wanted me to tell people that, but yeah, you're helping support a lot of these guys come out here and transition into.
And I find there's a lot of satisfaction that goes into that. And then I get veterans that come here. I mean, I get a few veterans every month that come in, onesies, and that come in as like, hey, Jeff, I'm having a hard time. Can you chat? Because, word's gotten out that I've got a bunch of combat experience, and I'm adjusted. I'm fine. I don't have PTSD. There's no worries,
You just like to drink.
I might drink, but so guys will come and actually I've had some civilians too that have come in and said, man, you went through all of this experience, over years and years and years. How do you do it? And I'll sit and spend time with these guys, and I do that. On the selfish side for me it's incredibly humbling, satisfying to serve, my fellow man. And I think that's, and it all goes back to, like all of this bashing and stuff. Out of all of this, the biggest thing that hurts me the most is that it hurts the community. We're dragging the community down, and we should be bolstering it. I'm a firm believer. Yeah. I'm a firm believer in that the tide rises all ships. Yeah. I've got multiple companies that other companies that I help that you could argue are direct competitors against me. I just talked to one on the phone, and I was like, hey, bro, whatever we can do to help you guys out.
And that's the crazy thing is like, would you say the community should be supportive of each other? But anyone who's spent time in the community as much as I have on social media knows it seems that we eat our own sometimes. And that's the most unfortunate thing about our community. It's like that we're competing with each other for no reason. I think there's enough lanes in the game for everyone to eat, right? There's enough food for everyone to eat. And for some reason, insecurities in the space cause these issues that don't need to be there.
Well, and I think too, there are those in the community that are teaming up with us, and that we team up with them. So I don't want to be too broad brushstrokes.
No, for sure.
But like Jaeger is a great one. Like James, was on his show last night. James is one of those guys from the community. He was the first guy from the tactical community when Evan and I were just trying to break away. From the golden handcuffs of the federal government. We're trying to break away, and James was the first guy. He flew out here to Utah to meet with us, to sit down and talk to us. And he was like, hey, you guys, I just want to help. He's like, they don't teach you guys how to do business or any of that stuff. I made a lot of mistakes. I'm here to help you. I'll help you. You guys just ask. And he has steadfastly always done that, always followed through with his word. He's never asked for anything in return. Yeah. He just wants to see the community rise.
And he's another one of those guys who caught, a negative backlash on social media and had to face it. And that guy has been so solid on, here's who I am, here's what I represent. If you don't like it.
And there's no doubt that what's coming out of James's mouth is what James believes. Yeah. And I mean, he doesn't compromise his integrity for anything. He's a great American and he fervently believes, as do I, and you too. I fervently believe in the veteran community. Yeah. And I know that if we can get together, if we can bind together, like a hand, then we'll all benefit, and the tide will rise all of the ships. The ocean, it's not a zero-sum game. And I hear this I heard this from other people about inventions, and they were going, well, don't you think pretty much everything's been invented? Did you know that the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office is receiving thousands of patent submissions every month? Every month, thousands of patent submissions. And half of those are products, not software. At least half, if not more of those, are new widgets, new things that they're putting out there. And so there's this tremendous, we live in an amazing time right now to be an entrepreneur and to be a businessman. And I would argue that those that were in the military, if you start up your own business, you start it up in your garage, right? Or start it up in your basement. And then when it takes on a life of its own, then you can quit your day-to-day job and follow your dream. But I think that people that have been in the mill were better situated with the tools for launching businesses. I think that's kind of one of those military things.
Yeah.
And so, and with that, that's where I'd say that's where guys like us step in, where I get phone calls nonstop and emails where it's like, hey, what do you think about this? Jason, my business partner, wrote a book about business called Launch It. We've sent out, hundreds of those things to veterans and just regular folks too, where it's just like, yes, because the future of the United States is the small businessman. The future of the United States is the entrepreneur that's pushing things forward. The future of the United States is our innovation, our progression, and how we evolve to meet the market for meeting the needs of people that are out there. That's what gives me heart. And I'll tell you what, we live in an absolute amazing time. We do. It's unbelievable.
Well, let me add last thing up so we wrap this up. Anything else that you want to plug out there, you want to put out there and put your information so people can find you and ask questions?
Yeah, guys, they've already, the guys have put it up there on readyman.com and ratstourniquet.com. And then you guys can reach out to us. And if you have any questions, you can email us if you need, and that's not questions about, you don't have to email me about questions about my product. If you've got questions about, hey, I'm interested in starting a business, I'm interested in something like this, I have a product, I get calls all the time because I've been through the patent process so many times. And I get calls all the time from people who are like, I don't even know where to start. I've got a great idea. I don't know where to start. I'm like, I know who I can refer you to. He will talk to you. He'll tell you what he thinks. And I've referred hundreds of people over to my patent firm, and they're phenomenally honest guys that are over there. So that's my parting remark would be like, if you guys need help out there, just ask. Yep. Come find us, find me, Rats Tourniquet or Ready Man, or jump on one, the social media.
Ask me. I'll give you
ask Rocco. And if we'll bend over backwards to help, especially, obviously I've got a bias towards the community, but we get regular Joes and Janes that come in, and it's like, how can we help?
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time, Jeff.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, man.
We're out of here.
I did it.